In the modern era of asymmetrical conflict, the most dangerous battlefield is not the desert terrain of the southern border, nor is it the high-stakes diplomatic chambers of Washington, D.C. The most volatile front line is the narrative space, the psychological domain where public perception is engineered, manipulated, and often weaponized before the smoke has even cleared from the barrel of a gun. We are living in a time where a kinetic event, a shooting involving federal agents, is instantly processed through an ideological filter designed to produce a specific political outcome. But what happens when that manufactured reality collides head-on with cold, hard intelligence? What happens when the supposed victims of state aggression are revealed to be something entirely different? Welcome to this deep dive analysis. Today, we are dissecting a critical incident that has exposed the fragility of the prevailing political narrative regarding border security and law enforcement. We are examining the recent officer-involved shooting in Phoenix, Arizona, involving Customs and Border Protection agents and a duo initially described in sympathetic tones as a married couple. For days, the machinery of political outrage churned, positioning this event as yet another example of federal overreach and brutality. However, a sudden and decisive release of information by the Department of Homeland Security has shattered that story, revealing a reality of armed danger, criminal history, and cartel-style tactics. The objective of this analysis is not merely to recount the events of a shooting, but to perform a forensic audit of the information war that followed. We will explore how the identity of this couple became the pivot point for a national debate. We will analyze the tactical realities of CBP operations that the media ignores, and we will ask the uncomfortable question regarding whether the rush to demonize law enforcement actually endangers the republic. To understand the gravity of this specific incident, we must first establish the operational and historical context of the environment in which it occurred. The United States southern border and its interior enforcement zones are not static environments. They are fluid, high-threat corridors utilized by transnational criminal organizations. For decades, the narrative surrounding border enforcement has shifted from a matter of national sovereignty to a polarized debate on human rights. In the post-2020 political climate, federal law enforcement agencies, particularly CBP and ICE, have been categorized by a significant portion of the political left not as protectors of the homeland, but as antagonistic occupying forces. This vilification is not without consequence. It creates a presumption of guilt in every engagement. Historically, an engagement involving federal agents was viewed through the lens of the use of force continuum, a ladder of escalation where lethal force is the last resort against an imminent threat. However, the current cultural framework attempts to rewrite this doctrine, suggesting that any use of force by the state is inherently suspect. This is the backdrop against which the Phoenix incident played out. We must also understand the geography. Phoenix is a major hub for human smuggling and narcotics trafficking. It is a transshipment point where the raw chaos of the border meets the infrastructure of the American interior. Agents operating here are not dealing with low-level infractions. They are often intercepting individuals with direct ties to cartels that rival nation-states in terms of resources and aggression. Let us now turn to the specifics of the incident and the immediate narrative construction. The event involved CBP agents attempting to apprehend suspects in a vehicle. The situation escalated, shots were fired, and individuals were struck. Almost immediately, the political reflex was triggered. The descriptor married couple was deployed across various channels. Language is a weapon, and this specific phrase was chosen for a tactical reason. Married couple evokes domesticity, stability, and innocence. It suggests two people driving to the grocery store or coming home from work. It strips away the context of the operation and replaces it with a picture of suburban normalcy violated by aggressive police tactics. This framing was intended to create a victim hierarchy where the suspects were at the top and the federal agents were the aggressors. This is where the narrative collision occurred. The Department of Homeland Security, in a move that surprised many observers with its speed and detail, released the biographical and criminal profiles of the individuals involved. This was the intelligence dump that derailed the outrage train. The male subject was not merely a husband. He was an individual with a reported history of armed robbery. The female subject, the wife, was reportedly driving the vehicle that was used as a weapon to ram federal agents. The vehicle contained a firearm. The innocent couple narrative disintegrated into a factual account of violent felons assaulting federal officers with a deadly weapon. We must analyze this from a tactical and legal perspective. In the realm of law enforcement, a vehicle is classified as a deadly weapon when a suspect uses a multi-ton machine to ram a vehicle occupied by agents, or to drive towards agents on foot. That meets the threshold for lethal force. The agents are not required to wait until they are crushed to defend themselves. The presence of a firearm in the suspect vehicle further corroborates the high-threat nature of the stop. The breakdown of the narrative here is total. The political left and media critics attempted to frame this as a summary execution of civilians. The facts reveal it was a defensive reaction to an assault by armed career criminals. Why is this revelation so significant? It exposes the danger of narrative first, fact second reporting. Had DHS delayed the release of this information by a week or a month, the city of Phoenix could have seen civil unrest similar to what we have witnessed in other American cities. The deception travels halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its boots. By exposing the identity and the criminal history of the married couple, DHS effectively neutralized a potential riot. It forces us to look at the methodology of the outrage industry. They rely on the anonymity of the suspect to project innocence. Once the suspect is revealed to be a dangerous actor, the political utility of the incident vanishes, and the media cycle typically moves on, leaving the agents with the trauma of the event and the public with a distorted memory of what happened. Let us dig deeper into the concept of identity in modern political warfare. The Fox News report highlights that the exposure of the couple's background challenged the Democratic narrative. This suggests that the narrative relies on the omission of data. It relies on the public not knowing who these people are. This is a form of information asymmetry. The activists and political operatives count on the privacy laws and bureaucratic slowness of the federal government to maintain a vacuum of information. In that vacuum, they plant the seeds of division. This incident demonstrates that transparency is the ultimate countermeasure to deception. When the government shows its hand, displaying photos of the gun, records of the robbery convictions, and evidence of the ramming, the abstract arguments about police brutality crumble against the concrete reality of criminal aggression. Furthermore, we must address the married couple aspect from a criminological standpoint. There is a misconception that criminals do not have families or spouses, or that being married precludes someone from dangerous behavior. Cartel operatives, gang members, and career criminals often operate in family units. In fact, using a spouse or a female driver is a known tactic to lower the suspicion of law enforcement or to hesitate the response of agents. By hiding behind the married couple label, the initial narrative attempted to exploit the agent's own humanity and the public's social biases. It is a cynical manipulation of traditional values to cover for criminal acts. Now, let us evaluate the strategic impact of this event and the potential scenarios for the future. The immediate impact is a temporary vindication of the CBP agents involved. However, the long-term damage of the initial false narrative persists. Every time an incident like this is framed as unprovoked aggression before the facts come out, it erodes the public trust in institutions. It creates a dangerous cycle where, should a genuine instance of misconduct occur, the public may be too exhausted or polarized to process it correctly. We can project 3 potential scenarios moving forward regarding the relationship between federal law enforcement and political narratives. Scenario 1 is the transparency doctrine. This incident could serve as a case study for DHS and other agencies. Realizing that silence allows false narratives to fester, federal agencies might adopt a more aggressive posture in releasing body cam footage, criminal records, and incident reports immediately following a shooting. This would act as a deterrent to false reporting and riot baiting. It would require a shift in policy, prioritizing the correction of the public record over traditional investigative secrecy. Scenario 2 is operational hesitation. This is the most dangerous scenario. If agents on the ground believe that every split-second decision to defend their lives will be met with a national smear campaign before the evidence is reviewed, they will hesitate. In a tactical environment, hesitation is fatal. We call this the Ferguson effect or the depolicing phenomenon. Agents might choose to let a suspect flee or fail to engage a threat because they fear the CNN headline more than the suspect's gun. This leads to a breakdown of law and order and an emboldened criminal element. Scenario 3 is the total polarization of truth. In this scenario, the facts released by DHS are simply rejected by the opposing political side. We are arguably already seeing this. Even with the revelation of the gun and the robbery history, there will be those who argue the couple was provoked or that the past crimes are irrelevant. In this world, there is no objective reality, only our truth and their truth. This makes governance impossible and turns every police interaction into a microcosm of the civil conflict. We must also consider the international signal this sends. The cartels are watching. They monitor U.S. media and political discourse closely. When they see that the American political system is ready to tear apart its own border security apparatus over a justified shooting, they view it as weakness. They view it as an opportunity to push harder, knowing that the agents are fighting a war on two fronts, one against the smugglers in the desert and one against the politicians and pundits in Washington. The economic and social costs of these false narratives are also staggering. The resources required to manage the protests, the legal fees, the investigations, and the loss of morale and the force are attacks on the American system. Moreover, the focus on demonizing agents distracts from the actual crisis, which includes the flow of dangerous narcotics, human trafficking, and the erosion of sovereignty. By fixating on the victimhood of armed criminals, the political class ignores the true victims, the communities destroyed by the drugs these networks distribute, and the migrants exploited by the smugglers these agents fight. Let us return to the central theme, the exposure of the identity. The DHS did not just release a name, they released a reality check. They reminded the public that the people CBP interacts with are often not desperate families seeking a better life, but hardened individuals involved in serious felony activity. This distinction is crucial for the 2024 and 2028 election cycles. Immigration and border security will remain top-tier issues. The party that can align its narrative with the reality on the ground, that the border is dangerous and requires robust enforcement, will likely hold the advantage. The party that continues to push the victim narrative in the face of contrary evidence risks alienating the moderate middle who simply want safe communities. It is also worth noting the silence that often follows these corrections. Where are the retractions? Where are the apologies to the agents who were labeled murderers in the first 24 hours? They rarely come. The news cycle moves on to the next outrage. This lack of accountability in the information space is why independent analysis is so vital. We cannot rely on the initial wave of reporting. We must wait for the evidence. And when the evidence contradicts the narrative, we must broadcast it louder than the original deception. In conclusion, the shooting in Phoenix and the subsequent exposure of the married couple's criminal reality is a watershed moment in the ongoing battle for the truth at the border. It demonstrates that the political narrative employed by the left, one that reflexively paints law enforcement as the villain and the suspect as the victim, is structurally unsound when struck by the hammer of facts. The DHS revelation proved that the agents were facing a lethal threat from individuals with a history of aggression, validating their actions and invalidating the political attacks launched against them. But this victory for the truth is fragile. It relied on the government releasing information quickly, which is not guaranteed in the future. The implications of this event are clear. We are in an information war where the identity of the combatants is as important as the ammunition they use. If we allow false narratives to dictate our security policies, we essentially disarm our defenders. We must demand a standard of evidence before outrage. We must support the agents who stand on the line between order and chaos, and we must scrutinize every headline that seeks to manipulate our emotions before engaging our intellect. The safety of the Republic depends not just on the strength of our borders, but on the integrity of our information. Do not let the label married couple or unarmed civilian blind you to the tactical reality until the evidence is on the table. Stay skeptical, stay informed, and never let the narrative override the truth.